So today's video is a little bit different because I'm going to tell you my very unconventional route into the Pilates industry and how I got to where I am now. Every Pilates instructor's journey is different, but this video is definitely for you if you feel behind, stuck, or like your career hasn't quite followed a straight line. So strap in for this one, get yourselves a cup of tea or coffee, and let's get started. So I am going to start all the way back at the beginning, which is when I was a child. I actually grew up with epilepsy. So epilepsy, it is a condition of the brain that basically you have seizures, and it comes across in different people in different ways. Some people will actually get warnings if their seizures will come. I did not. So I would just randomly drop down to the floor in seizure. And then if I had a seizure, it was very severe. And I was just completely done for the next day or two. I ended up with a lot of bruises and cuts. I chipped some of my teeth. I got carpet burn. And it just affected my whole life. I was very lucky that my parents were actually still very supportive. How often I had seizures, it varied a lot. I think between age 13 to 14 and a half or something around like that. I actually went an entire year and a half without them. But then aged 15 to 17, they were frequent. They were at one point daily. At one point, I was a patient at Great Ormond Street. I was having multiple daily seizures. But let's rewind from that a little bit more to the phase where they were, I would say on average, maybe one every couple of months or something. Now, obviously, as a child with epilepsy, you don't really understand the weight of it, but there was always this kind of unspoken assumption of dependence where a lot of people in secondary school are choosing their GCSEs or their A-levels based on what career they want. That was never really discussed. Oh, what do you want to do? Like, it was more like, what's going to be possible for you? And at that point, no one really knew. And so there was kind of this in the back of my mind, career was something I sort of thought about, but not really. And definitely, I'm a bit of a dreamer by nature, but in that aspect of my life, I guess I had some kind of awareness that some things weren't possible. That being said, like I said, my parents were so supportive growing up. They really tried to give me as normal of a life as possible, supporting me through doing sports that I wanted to, like trampolining and dancing and kayaking. And, I had seizures in the pool, which must have terrified them. They must have known the risk was there. I wasn't really that aware of it, I'll be quite frank. I just knew that I wanted to do it because mentally I was completely there. Now I'm not so much, but mentally I was completely there on par with my peers. And then the dancing, they eventually asked me to leave because of the epilepsy. They wanted my mum there, but with younger sisters who are twins and a dad who between work and he had a lot of issues with alcohol as well, just wasn't able to attend. And that's nothing that I've ever actually really thought about since. I was just obviously. And I didn't like that school that much in the end anyway. I loved dancing, but I didn't like that school that much. They weren't inclusive. They weren't the nicest school ever. They were trying to train people into professional dancers, and I was just there because I loved dancing so much. I'm really grateful, and I think it has still threaded through into my life, and that my parents chose possibility over their fear, and that relationship with movement being something that was freedom rather than fitness are kind of building blocks of what led me to this career. And on the negative side, where I was asked to leave dance, and there were a lot of other occurrences of that. I was actually eventually asked to leave school. So I lost 2 years of school because it was too disruptive. And both myself and my mum, we just didn't want me in a special school. That systems weren't always built for me, but I always valued so much whenever my parents or a club or somewhere would try to be inclusive of me. So inclusivity is something that I think has just become very close to my heart. So when I was about 14, I was super into my trampolining and I freaking broke my arm. Funnily enough, not through a seizure, just because I was going in for a double somersault, miscalculated it, held back, put my arm out in front of me, and then I'm going to show you my scar. So they had to stitch it back on basically because it came off. And I stuck with trampolining as a practice for maybe a year off. I did that, but I had so much fear around it. And I think it was the first time that I understood risk. And so what I ended up doing was training as a coach and coaching children to do trampolining. So when people ask me, when did my teaching career start? I sort of see it as like, what are you asking me? Because my mind actually goes to that because that's when I first started looking at other people's body and trying to give them feedback, understand their movements. So I always see it as that. If they're asking when was Pilates, that came a bit later and we're going to get there. But I actually loved the coaching. I loved the teaching. And I ended up volunteering quite a lot, coaching children in trampolining and gymnastics. That then started to plant the career seed of, okay, I want to work with children and maybe sort of something like a TA or working in a nursery. Obviously, it was still very epilepsy outcome dependent here. And I just find it interesting how the skills kind of show up before the job does. Or at least in my case, that's how it went, that the skills kind of led me to the job rather than there was a job in front of me that I wanted to do that I then trained the skills for. After I got asked to leave school, I had a couple of very, very bad years with the epilepsy, with the kind of emotional and mental whiplash from that as well, of it getting so severe and then suddenly disappearing, just not knowing, like sort of my life was forking in two different possibilities. Like, yeah, I'm going to go for the childcare thing. I went to a vocational school because I was just done with traditional school. I was never that great, if I'm honest. I did well at a few things, but I wasn't an all-rounder. I was terrible at humanities. I think I got an E in geography. I got a U in IT. I'm trying to think. I think I originally failed science and then retook it on my own and got an A. So I also just wasn't built for the traditional system of being in a classroom. And that might have been epilepsy in relationship with the school related, or it might have just been interest related. I don't know. I actually quite ended up liking science later in life. But I wasn't particularly good at it to start. And with that vocational course, I actually managed to get onto a teacher training BEd, which I hated. So I got to uni and I hated the course. It was a very 9 to 5 course, so I couldn't take part in anything because as well with the placements that we were going to be allocated on, we would have to travel an hour to 2 hours. And I wanted to join societies. I wanted to go out. I wanted the uni experience. And I told myself, well, I could just change degree and then do the PGCE funded at the end. It made way more sense. So that's what I did. And then I joined the Dance Society. So I got back into dancing and then I took a year abroad in Sweden, which is where I met my ex-husband. I was married. I was there for initially a year to do my year in education, but then we met and I ended up my third sort of being half in the UK, half in Sweden. And I started up my own dance society there with a friend. And all of this dancing, getting back into the dancing at uni, that was really the catalyst for falling in love with movement again, because I'd always loved the trampolining and stuff and then things got dark. But it was about falling in love with it again. And movement has always been freedom for me. After the couple of years in hospital with the epilepsy, my body, you do not understand the level of atrophy that happened. I had zero strength whatsoever. I had neck issues from like laying in bed so much, from whiplash, just from bad posture, from everything. And it wasn't Pilates that got me motivated back into it. It was dancing. So then I moved back to Sweden. And then we get the next twist in our story on a whim because I had become so passionate about dancing. I auditioned for a professional dancer education. I'm 24 at this stage, by the way. I'm not like 18. And on a whim, I got on it. So that was the next couple of years of my life. And during that education, I met a friend who introduced me into Pilates because she was doing her training. She was also a dancer. So she was actually working as a dancer. I was a student. But she introduced me to this Pilates studio. She was doing that training. And then I ended up doing the training as well. It was a very hands-on, practical mentorship apprentice style comprehensive education. And that was my job. So I did that part-time while I was at uni, as well as starting up a dance school. Like quite an adventurous life here. So I started up a dance school. We had events and classes. And then we really integrated a lot of the mat work into our conditioning. This was an adult dance school. It was for hobby dancers rather than for professional ones. Yeah. So by this point, remember, I'm in Sweden and I'm married now. Oh my goodness, this feels like such a... I feel like it's almost like if you're a therapist watching this, you must... I don't know. Whatever. We're just going to get all the story out. So by this point, I'm married. I'm settled in Sweden and my Swedish is kind of getting there by this point. I've been learning Swedish on the side. And I had the dance school. The Pilates studio closed down pretty soon after I started teaching there. I'd say about 4 or 5 months, something like that. And I didn't pursue it I didn't pursue another studio to try and teach it. At that point, I wasn't passionate about it. I liked it, but I was still very, very set on dance at that point. But I ended up doing my Zumba and my Les Mills qualifications and started working at gyms. And pretty quickly, I decided to do my personal trainer level 4 as well, which was in Sweden. I don't know if it's in general in Sweden or just the school I went to. It was a far cry better than the standard level 3s I've seen here. So there were prerequisites to get onto it, for one. So you needed to prove that you actually knew something already about movement. There was also a little bit of business and anatomy, of course, and it was all physio led, but it wasn't like, oh, let's just motivate and be a friend with someone in the gym. All right, so not sure what year we're on right now, but let's say a few years later, a few years goes by, we're doing fitness, we're doing mat Pilates still, just not equipment. I don't know if it was actually a big thing in Sweden. I didn't look to it. I don't think it was at that point. I think it is starting to grow now. I know that a couple of gyms over there have started having reformer, but they are a little bit lagging. So I don't think it was just me being behind. And also, I also wasn't on social media in Sweden. So I wasn't having that influence. So I'm kind of like, maybe it was bigger than I thought it was. At the time, looking back in my mind, there was absolutely no equipment or reformer Pilates over there. But maybe it was just my circle and my view of it. So I was doing that. I was doing Zumba, I was doing spin, I was doing PT, you name it. I loved life, whatever. And I had to leave my relationship. I'm not going to go into the details of that on this video, but I had to leave. It was, a year later, I moved back to England. So that was during COVID. Sweden did not have lockdown. So I kept busy with work in the meantime. And then post-COVID, it was just a series of unfortunate events. I was like hanging on by a thread in Sweden. And then I think COVID felt settled and I just let go. I let myself just let go. I moved back and that was probably rock bottom. Being back in England, starting again. Pretty quickly, I start working in a gym. I'm very low on self-esteem right now. I'm very afraid of the future. I'm crying all the time. Like, I've been there, I promise you. Because it wasn't just, I don't know, if anyone's ever been through a really hard breakup or divorce, you find that it's not only the person you thought you were with that you lost and the future you thought you were going to have, but all the other pillars come crashing around you. And in my case, our lives were so integrated. We'd been teaching dance together. So that business fell apart. We had shared friends that also fell apart. I mean, a lot of my friends were super, super there for me, but let's just say one wasn't. And work in this industry where you're projecting joy and try to fill people's cup, when your cup is empty and you've got nothing to give, that falls apart as well. So I was at rock bottom. I started teaching at this gym, which in retrospect, it was quite exploitative. I think in my mind, it's not that I hated myself, but I'd just been so used to such a shit situation for so long. I'd kind of lost a bit of hope and belief and whatever. And then I was teaching mat there, PTing a little bit there. And then I just, at some point, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I said, I have to get out. And I applied for every single job that you can imagine that I was close to qualified for. And the first one I got, I was like, that's it. I'm gone. I'm going to move to London and be a Pilates instructor, I guess, full time. Because the job I ended up getting first was as a Pilates instructor in Notting Hill, full time at a boutique studio, assisting with classes and physio rehab. And that was 4 years ago, I want to say. And I've been doing it full time ever since. I went self-employed a year and a half ago. 100% recommend it. The employment job, it served its purpose, but it was an awful company to work for. So overall, it was not one of the worst experiences in this story. But it is not a company I would recommend, hence why I don't mention the name. And it did start to give me the feeling of having a career again and being back in this world. And this world started to feel safe. And it did take time. So through the last 4 years of being in London and employment, but more with the self-employment, I think that's where my love of it has started to come. Because I have never really been fussed about a certain type of movement being the best. I've tried everything and I love it all. But it's always for me been about community, inclusivity. I don't like it when people take things too seriously, but I do love people who are passionate about what they do. And I feel that the more I've been here and the more people I've met in this industry, the more I've just felt all of those things. and started to really feel at home in it. And I've become so passionate about it and eager to learn more and more, because you do meet so many amazing people, not only the clients, but the other instructors, the studio owners. There are some pragmatic benefits to working in Pilates rather than the fitness world, such as you are not the one doing all of the exercises all of the time. So if you get injured, it's kind of handy. You also get more secure blocks of work. But I think what's kept me in it is just the community. Here in London, it's fantastic. Honestly, I can't think of a better place to be for this job. So yeah, please join us. So if you are actually thinking about doing your Pilates instructor training, just do it, please. You won't regret it. It might take you a bit of time. It will not be linear. Like, as you can see, there have been a lot of obstacles and a lot of squiggles to overcome. You're going to have an adventure. Let's put it that way. You're going to have an adventure. Life is an adventure. And I would rather have this adventure in Pilates than I would in any other field. That's for sure. All right. So that was a bit of a heavy and a weird one. I hope you got something from that. If you do have any questions, do feel free to DM me on Instagram. You can let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. It really helps me. It really helps the channel, and it's completely free. And I don't spam you with anything. So you're all safe. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you soon.